whether you're criminality, whether you're Republican, Democrat, I can predict by your parents.
Yeah.
It's political affiliation is tremendously genetic, super genetic.
Yeah. We were finishing up on the happiness hypothesis, and I just thought it was really, when we talk about Jonathan Haidt. By the way, Jonathan Haidt wrote another book called The Coddling of the American Mind, which I also recommend. But go ahead, Ty, what you're talking about, the happiness hypothesis?
I was just saying, like, the dark secret of the most controversial thing that I can't talk about, and even Dr. Buss and a lot of people don't want to talk about, is genetics. Because first off, it strikes people as like racist racist kind of, there was a theory that, my grandma in Berlin, she met Adolf Hitler in 1936 when she was 18 years old at a little shindig at a park, when he was Man of the Year in America on the Time magazine cover. But there's eugenics and a lot of kind of bad science that misinterpreted and manipulated the data on genetics. It's not so much race. It's not so much that this race is smart and this race is dumb. It's more like families is a way to think about it. Some families are taller than others.
Yeah.
Some families are prettier than others. Some families are, everything. Some families have more anger issues. Some have more mental illnesses. You got to be careful who you have kids with.
Yeah.
Be careful, because one of the things that passes, there's a few things that pass with crazy heritability, height, skin tone, eye color, hair color, but intelligence, things like bipolar, schizophrenia is very, genetic, but men will sleep with anything. So you get a lot of these things persist, and women will too. Yeah, although women have often, not always,
it's interesting.
Men have oppressed women in that certain sense, but
Marilyn Monroe's grandmother suffered from mental illness. Marilyn Monroe's mother suffered from mental illness, and Marilyn Monroe suffered from mental illness.
Yeah.
And like you said before, if a woman is beautiful enough, and by the way, same thing with men. I listen to, I hate to call them out, but Kyrie Irving or Kanye West. When these situations, women will also, if someone's high enough status for whatever reason, you kind of skip the mental illness part. So yes, I can definitely see that apart. The other thing that you mentioned before, so I started a friendship with Satoshi Kanazawa after reading after reading Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters, and he was canceled for posting some of his evolutionary psychology work. He has another book called The Intelligence Paradox, and the idea of my height being heritable or my eye color being heritable is not controversial. The idea of my intelligence being heritable is not controversial. I have a grandfather who was a professor at Southern Methodist University, and I have an uncle who's a famous spinal surgeon. The idea of intelligence being heritable is not controversial until you have two parents who are not very smart, and now it's controversial. Right. Now all of a sudden people find it to be extremely offensive, the idea that my child is not that smart because maybe I'm not that smart, and so that becomes an issue as well, and it will get people canceled as soon as you start talking about that. Yeah,
and Kanazawa, if you throw race into it, that is an area I do not go.
Yeah, me neither.
There's places where they say where angels fear to tread, but there's science. Look, put it this way, as I said, our grandkids will think we're idiots.
Yeah.
Everything's genetic, everything. And as I said, it's more familial. It's more at the family level. You're going to find extremely intelligent people in every corner of the world. But some places there's a lot of tall people, and some places there aren't. The Maasai in Africa are the tallest, people in the world. The Dutch are the tallest white people in the world. And a lot of this is genetic. There's obviously the thing about epigenetics and environment. Usually environment only can negative affect you. So for example, when I used to own nightclubs, I had a head of security who was 7'2". Okay, he was 6 foot when he was 8 years old. Rick just met him. Rick was just with him, and I went back to North Carolina. The average dude can't eat more food growing up and become 7'2". But Chris, his name's Christopher Benjamin. He's from Brooklyn, big guy, weighed about 490 pounds when he used to be my head of the door, But now, only thing environment could do was stunt his growth. Like if nobody had fed him as a little kid, he might have been 4'11". So in general, the problem with the environmental, because a lot of people want to say, oh, this is environmental and this is environment. Yeah, on a negative side, it's hard for the environment to, like, there's pretty much not much you can do to make your kids smarter. And that makes people mad.
Yeah.
And then people are going to watch this and be like, Tai, you're full of shit. I'm like, okay. I always say I wanted to start this series called Too True. It's too true to talk about. Not only am I right on this subject, but it's so right, you fucking flip out. Yeah. I often tell people the thing you're the maddest about at me is probably my biggest truth.
Yeah.
So in terms of, at the moment of conception, can you get that light back on? At the moment of conception, you have the greatest impartation of intelligence. So if you're a man or a woman, be careful who you sleep with. Women, by the way, the female side passes slightly more intelligence than the male side. So it's like, man, go. I remember I first moved to Hollywood years ago, and I'm on this date with this really beautiful woman. And I was like, she's like, what's your plans? I'm like, yeah, next week I got to go to Miami. And I remember she's like, Miami, where's that? Oh no. I thought she meant maybe where is it in Florida? She's like, that's Northern California. I was like, and this is an American, okay? It's not like she's from Mesopotamia. And I remember just being like, oh my God, this woman, she was like 26 or something. It wasn't 12 years old. I'm like, you ain't never heard of Miami? Now, by the way, for you women there, I'm sure you've been on dates with stupid guys. Can you turn it down just a teeny? You've probably been out with dumb guys, but yeah, you got to be careful there, because the biggest impartation of many things happens at the moment of conception.
Yeah.
That's why men are often deadbeat dads, because men aren't as important as people think. There's this thing called life history theory of psychology, which is also kind of controversial, although pretty respected. And, they have this thing called K factor. And what is important on certain variables, a father in the home is very important. On something, the biggest thing is a mother. If a mother abandons her kids, you get real problems.
Yeah.
But fathers often have imparted their greatest gift at moment of conception. They gave their genes, and that's why men disappear more. And it's not just men disappear. If you actually study biology, humans are too narcissistic, so we're really into humans. But if you look at it's whatever has internal gestation versus or largest gametic cells. So, for example, women have large sex cells, gametic cells, reproductive cells. They're so large, you only have about 700-800 in your lifetime, whereas men have these little teeny sperm. Men can and so what happens? Seahorses is the opposite. Yep. Internal gestation is in males, and so the male seahorse has all the traits that we think are female, doesn't like one night stands, runs and is not aggressive. It's the female seahorses are super aggressive. So anyway, going back to whoever has internal gestation generally is super important. And the non-internal gestation often is like an impartation. Now, fathers do matter, more on a protective side.
Yeah.
And fathers tend to matter a lot for boys traditionally, because when a father's older, he can impart his business and resources. So you see that in Eskimo, but you see that in Donald Trump. His father imparted, and Bill Gates, his father was a wealthy lawyer. Donald Trump's father was a very powerful New York real estate magnate. And he was able to co-sign $100 million loan guarantee, which, that's not that Donald Trump didn't accomplish anything. I'm just saying these are the facts on the ground that even Donald Trump doesn't refute. So it's a complicated thing about what genetics do, and it's almost too true that it's I kind of hold back on that conversation.
So